the nation is undergoing one of the most serious, if not the most critical, constitutional crisis since the Civil War. You have a heedless president, callously indifferent to the Constitution and the limits placed upon the executive branch by that document. He ignores the Congress. He has violated every single principle that America basically stands for. He has ordered the assassination of foreign leaders he doesn't like. He has killed by an executive decision that exceeds his power under the Constitution. Up to now it hasn't been exerted that way. He has killed and caused to kill innocent children and women and civilians. He has invaded and suborned and attempted to pervert the nationality, the sovereignty and nationality of independent sovereign nations such as those in Central America and elsewhere in Latin America.
Grenada.
He has violated 3 of our solemn treaties, some of which we initiated ourselves. He violated not only 3 treaties, but 2 of our statutes with the invasion of Grenada. Reagan wasn't lying to the country. He was saying, look, I've been an actor, and I'm asking you to elect me to act the role of the presidency. And he has. I said, what disturbs me is that Reagan has always been an actor that requires a 3x5 cue card. In other words, he needs scriptwriters. And it's the scriptwriters that worry me because I saw the names.
Congressman Henry Gonzalez of San Antonio talks about Contragate and the crisis in the United States. We also will present extensive news coverage of the subject right now on Alternative View. This program was recorded before the Contragate court cases and congressional hearings had been concluded, but it's a good example of how differently we covered the subject compared to the establishment media. One thing that's so nice about having Congressman Henry Gonzalez from San Antonio on Alternative Views, that he isn't like other people you see up there in Washington in Congress, or at least the big majority of them, because for one thing he tells the truth, he likes to, and he does it in a very colorful, directful way. The last time we had him on, we really had some wonderful things to discuss. He had some great insights, and he's going to be with us tonight on Alternative Views. Also, we'll be presenting news from various sources, giving a lot of information about the Contragate situation that you haven't seen in the regular media.
After the Iran-Contra hearings this summer, media commentators and pundits have been trying to figure out what really went on. A variety of theories and explanations of who was behind the Contragate scandals, who was in charge of it, what they really did, what they were attempting to accomplish. All of these issues are being hotly debated in the media. And The Nation, in their August the 8th issue, gives you a summary, an overview of the Iran-Contra theories that try to explain what really happened. We're going to run through these theories now, and we will add some other information that has come out on the Iran-Contra scandals since the Nation article has been published, and try to give you some more perspectives on this famous event of the Reagan administration. The first theory that the Nation describes is, let dead directors of Central Intelligence lie. This is, of course, the theory of Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, that William Casey was the mastermind for the whole Iran-Contra affair. According to this, it was Casey who told Oliver North to hire Richard Secord to deliver the planes to the Iranians, who told him to hire Secord to deliver the weapons to the Contras. It was Casey who was advising North, who was meeting with him, who was in charge of it. It was Casey who saw this as the ultimate covert operation. It was Casey who wanted to have a secret team outside of the CIA to carry out covert operations that would not be subject to congressional scrutiny. In other words, Casey was the big cheese of the whole Iran-Contra affair. This is, of course, very convenient, because in CIA terminology, William Casey is no longer operational. He died, so he's not there to blame or to interrogate or to jail for this scandal. So it makes a very convenient scapegoating. So the nation is a bit skeptical of this theory. The second theory that they're also skeptical about, that was advanced in the mainstream media, is the cowboy and wimps theory. According to this theory, which was behind the Tower Commission report, the cowboys in the National Security Council, Oliver North and his friend, were running amok. And the directors of the National Security Council, McFarlane and Poindexter, were wimps. They just couldn't keep the cowboys reined in, and that this was just simply an adventure of Oliver North and the cowboys. The problem with this is that Oliver North appears to be a good soldier who likes to follow orders, and it's unlikely that he himself was able to mastermind and carry out this whole scheme. This theory is also beloved by Henry Kissinger, Zabrinsky, and Scowcroft of the Tower Commission, that simply indicates that if there had been a stronger head of the National Security Council like them, they would have been able to keep everything in order and none of these problems would have occurred. And this seems like a somewhat superficial account of the whole Iran-Contra thing that would blame it on the cowboys like Oliver North. The other theory that's advanced is called the flesh peddlers. This was beloved by Senator Warren Rudman and other members of the Iran-Contra Select Committee. This simply indicated that it was the promise of profits to people like Secord and Hakim and the organization that was delivering the weapons to Iran and then to the Contras and profiting from it, that was behind it. This Secord, the Iranian arms dealer, Ghorbanifar, Hakim, that all of these people were sort of leading North around. They were encouraging him to carry out these events. They were the ones that kept the operation going simply for profit, simply to make money. The variation of this theory is the Christic Institute's secret team theory that indicates that it is Secord, certain operatives in the CIA and Defense Department, certain CIA operatives who'd been active in the Bay of Pigs in Vietnam, who for decades had involved themselves in drug dealing, political assassinations, armed dealings, that this secret team was behind the Iran-Contra affair and was really responsible for all of the events. Again, this lets the Reagan administration and President Reagan himself off the hook and makes it appear that an outside agency was behind this all, which of course leaves out the factor that there must be some people in the Reagan administration who were involved with these operatives for this affair to have taken place. The final theory that we'll look at is the October surprise theory. This theory indicates that the arms for hostage dealings, and particularly giving the arms to Iran and release for the hostages, did not begin simply in the summer of 1985, but goes back all the way to the fall of 1980. According to this theory that we've reported on Alternative Views, and it was first in these times in the nation, in 1980, when Reagan was running for election against Jimmy Carter, he feared an October surprise. The Reagan team feared that the Iranians were going to release the American hostages to President Carter, or he was going to send a military team in to release them, and that the popularity that Carter would get for the release of the hostages would win him the election. So the Reagan administration was very concerned with this in October of 1980, and according to certain reports, they cut a deal with the Iranians where they agreed to give the Iranians spare parts for the weapon systems that the Iranians had, what they needed in their war with Iraq, and it had been embargoed because the Iranians were holding the hostages, and that the Reagan administration told the Iranians, in effect, hey, we'll give you a better deal than the Carter administration will. We'll ship you all of these spare parts. We'll deliver weapons to you secretly. And so if you hold the American hostages till after the elections, we'll award you. Well, as it turns out, the hostages were held until the day of Reagan's inauguration, where they were triumphantly released, and the Reagan administration got off to these good vibes. And according to these Times report, a woman, Barbara Honegger, who was in the Reagan administration election team in October before the election, said there was great relief in the Reagan camp because the word went out that Richard Allen had cut a deal. Allen later became Reagan's first national security advisor. And the story is that he and McFarlane, Bud McFarlane, who later became the national security advisor, met with the Iranians secretly and cut a deal. Soon after this story was broken, Flora Lewis of the New York Times interviewed Bani Sadr, who was the president of Iran at that time, who confirmed that indeed a group of the Islamic clerics who were close to the Ayatollah Khomeini did cut a deal with the Reagan administration. The Khomeini group just hated Jimmy Carter and did not want to release the hostages to give Carter the benefit for the election of the hostage release. And according to Bani Sadr, he had heard that the deal was cut with the Reagan team, and later he learned that it was Richard Allen and Robert McFarlane that cut the deal. Interestingly enough, Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia said in a speech in the Senate on October the 6th, after these stories broke, this opens up disturbing questions about the longevity of this ill-conceived arms for hostage strategy. It needs further investigation. Yet the mainstream media have hardly taken up this explosive story, which, if it was true, would lead to impeachment of Reagan and his team for treason. This would be one of the great scandals in political history, but so far the media hasn't gone after it. I heard that there was a report in the AP wire services that appeared in the Austin American Statesman, but that it hasn't really been reported in any detail.
They're speaking of impeachment. Of course, Henry Gonzalez of San Antonio is calling again for Reagan's impeachment. Congressman Gonzalez, we saw on C-SPAN a while back that you were calling for the impeachment of Ronald Reagan. Now, the last time you were on our program, a few years ago, you were also calling for his impeachment. Have things changed, or there are some new things that are justifying your statements for impeaching Reagan?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The first time, or the last time I was on this program, I made the statement that the administration was the most corrupt administration, that in the years that I had served under 6 different presidents, including Reagan, this was the most corrupt. At that time, that statement was considered outlandish, but I had quite a bit of evidentiary material covering almost every single major department. Since then, it is now well established that you have more than 110 high officials in the Reagan administration that have been either indicted or under indictment. And that does not include the characters that you've seen in the recent so-called Iran-Contra hearings.
So your present desire to impeach Reagan, it includes or is hiding?
No, that was going to be an impeachment resolution based on the responsibility of the chief administrator. However, since the more spectacular cases, the Department of Labor Secretary, who later apparently claimed exoneration, was being tried and had been indicted. And also the fact that while I was preparing what we call the specifics, this other more grave situation arose, which is the developments in this irreversible course of the president of intervention, military intervention in Central America, and the present and clear danger to the basic constitutional structure of our form of government as we have lived under it now, and the fact that with his own admissions on national television last November the 13th, it was quite apparent that he was admitting to violations of not only treaties, but 3 of our basic laws. And for the life of me, I haven't understood why his own admissions at the time haven't really been brought forth in a more direct manner. But nevertheless, it took me some 4 or 5 months before I had prepared the impeachment resolution based on those violations and admission thereof by the President on March the 5th, this last March the 5th. And the resolution has 7 articles, 6 specific articles of impeachment, and the general article of impeachment that the Constitution says is sufficient in itself anyway. And the results of the introduction of that resolution have been simply amazing to me. Throughout the country, with no real publicity given on in any of the major media.
They won't touch that.
No, or for that matter, in the with the exception of the first day on March the 5th when I introduced it, the Speaker had asked me to preside in order to preside during the last remaining special orders. And when I finished that, 2 reporters came down and asked me to go up to the press room because there were some others who wanted to know if indeed and in fact I had introduced that resolution earlier that afternoon, and I did, and they did. They placed a short story in on the wires that day, March the 5th, but how much coverage it got I have no way of knowing. But since then, and particularly within the last 60 days, it seems that in almost every state there has been some reaction and some concern expressed. So I have received in excess of 6,500 letters, mailograms, telegrams, petitions in 3 other states, California, Washington, Oregon. I take it back 4, 1 in New England. There are organizations that have been formed in order to stimulate the dissemination of knowledge of information concerning the impeachment resolution known as House Joint Resolution 111.
What's been the response in Congress? You've been ostracized?
No, I haven't received any criticism within the collegiate of the membership. I have had private remarks as to the fact that I'm admired, that I'm considered one of those that's way ahead of the events, and that were it not for the fact that the ongoing hearings by the Joint Committee, which involves the members of the Judiciary Committee of the House, that they would probably consider it timely, but that they feel that it would be premature until this Joint Committee has had a chance to finish and complete its hearings, establish whatever must be referred to the Justice Department on the basis of criminal culpability. And I keep reminding them that impeachment has nothing to do with criminal culpability. And of course, if you have not read a little bit of the history as to why that section is in the Constitution itself, or really do more than a cursory examination or reading of the particular portions of the Constitution, it's easy to conclude that a impeachment is like a criminal trial, when, as a matter of fact, it isn't. And the fact that an impeachment or a resolution of impeachment which can be only voted upon in the House, is almost the equivalent of an indictment or a recital of allegations as to malfeasance, misfeasance, and the like in public office, and all federal officials are subject to impeachment.
And that only means a vote as to whether they should go ahead with
a trial in the Senate.
That's all. But Reagan has said all along, he said, I haven't heard a single word that indicated any of the testimony that the laws were broken. Well, Jim Wright, the House Speaker, issued a statement of 7 laws that were broken. Representative John Conyers said that he said when you consider the evidence, you get a formidable list of law-breaking, duplicity, and cover-up. And then Conyers went on to say that Reagan, Meese, and Elliott Abrams are impeachable. So Conyers concluded, he said, there is a smoking cannon. Reagan was not only involved in the plan itself to sell arms to Iran, he was also involved in the cover-up. And he even gave false testimony to the Tower Commission. Now, there ought to be something impeachable about all that, wouldn't you think?
Somewhere in
Well,
there.
if the media brought all these stories out that we're reading, it would be necessary to impeach Reagan. That these crimes are much greater than anything poor old Richard Nixon did.
You feel sorry for
Really?
Nixon, you know.
Well, speaking of the Tower Commission, this was also brought out by The Nation. There was a little story in it. Since the Tower Commission went down in February, it finally closed down. You know, you can't get a copy of that. You can't get a copy of the proceedings, what all happened there.